So another thing, another concept or principle that I wanted to talk about was teach one another. The Savior tells us often to teach one another. Could you expand on that and tell us what it means to you to teach one another?
I love being a professional teacher because that way I could always be a student. And I could learn from students, from their questions, and from the dialogue and discussion we might have in a classroom setting. Peers, as I'd meet with other faculty members, as we would talk about different things. Sitting around a table with some of them at a round table discussion that might show up for years on BYU TV. Just to learn with one another. It's not that we're necessarily looking for the single right answer, but we're looking maybe for other answers. When I was interviewed by Marion D. Hanks before starting my teaching career at BYU, he was impressed with all the years of language studies I had done, particularly with Hebrew. And he asked, well, how do you plan on using Hebrew as you're teaching, say, an Old Testament class at BYU? How much are you going to use it? And I thought for a minute, said, well, probably not very much at all. He said, what? You spent all these years studying it. Why are you going to use it much in your class?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I've studied it, I know it, but my students haven't. So this would be beyond their frame of reference.
Yeah.
And then he said, well, then why have you spent all this time and energy studying it? And I didn't realize at the time, I don't know if it was deliberately so or not, but it was very much a loaded question.
Yeah, I bet it was. Yeah.
And I pondered for just a moment. I said, well, you know, as I study Hebrew, particularly as I'm studying, using it in my Old Testament studies and all, I find that knowing the Hebrew doesn't really give me the answers. It just raises the questions.
Oh, beautiful.
Because you see it from a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
For example, one class I took at Harvard was an intensive third-year Arabic class on studying the Crusades, but using only medieval Arabic language sources and writings.
Wow.
And I had studied the Crusades in my European history classes at BYU.
Yeah. So you knew about it.
And to read it from that perspective, I mean, you would have hardly put the two together because they were so completely different perspectives.
Wow.
Well, likewise, even though the Hebrew text may not really give any definitive answers, but it gives a different perspective and a little different cultural context that forces me to think, well, what might that really mean, especially where my society and culture today is so different than what that one does, but seeing it more from their angle than mine, I might learn something.
Yeah. I can see a little bit of that in learning a different language. I served my mission in the Netherlands. And so when I went there, we were singing a very common hymn, and yet it was just a slightly different word. And I went, oh, wow. And I just started crying because it was just like such a different meaning because it gave me a higher level meaning and understanding than the English. Yeah. So I understand a little bit. Yeah, that's great.
To be notified of our newest YouTube videos, be sure to click the subscribe button here. Head over to our new website for the latest gifts and promotions. For more videos like this one, click this playlist here.